Welcome to the 7 core management behaviors, when and how to use them. This is Module 4, Follow-Up. The series is brought to you by John Dario and the Retail Management Formula, LLC. Our discussion of the 7 core management behaviors thus far has focused on the left side of the management situation grid, or the behaviors that are used before employee performance of a task or skill. Module 2 is about the behavior delegate, which is the all-important way that managers get work done through their employees. Module 3 focused on the behavior train, which is the way that managers get employees ready to be delegated to. Now we'll move to the right side of the management situation grid. This module is dedicated to the behavior follow-up. The objective of follow-up is to ensure employee performance is matching your expectations. This is really important. It's one thing to delegate tasks to employees, it's another to know if those tasks actually get done properly. So, follow-up is the act of inspecting the performance of employees, comparing what you see to your expectations, and measuring the difference between the two. Let's check the logic by looking at our management situation grid. According to the grid, the behavior of follow-up sits on the right side and right on the line between low and high employee capability. Does this make sense? Starting with employee capability, does it sound right that follow-up would occur with employees who have either low or high capability? Sure, that makes sense. For an employee who has low capability and you are training, you want to check on their performance so that you know whether they are learning successfully or not. For an employee who has high capability and you have delegated to them, you want to check on their performance to ensure they completed the task satisfactorily. Either way, you need to follow up. And for the second part of the grid, the timing of the management action, does it make sense that it happens during or after employee performance? Of course it does. You can't follow up on something that hasn't yet happened. So, we're confirmed that follow-up is a management behavior that happens with all employees, regardless of their ability level, and it happens during or after employee performance. One good way to look at follow-up is to view it as the bridge that connects delegation and training with the other management behaviors of praise, correct, coach, and review. For example, when you delegate a task to a capable employee, you should provide feedback during or after their completion of the task. Feedback takes the form of either praise or correction. You can't give effective feedback if you haven't actually inspected and measured the employee's performance against your expectations. So the act of following up puts you in position to praise or correct employees' performance after you have delegated tasks. Similarly, while you are training an employee on a new task or skill, you will want to coach them on ways to improve their capability. You can't effectively coach unless you have first inspected and measured the employee's performance against your expectations. The point about follow-up being a bridge may seem really simple and obvious, but you'd be amazed how often managers fail to cross the bridge and therefore miss the opportunity to provide feedback and coaching. Let's now talk about some tips that will maximize the effectiveness of your follow-up. The first tip is to inspect performance yourself rather than asking the employee about it. Consider the following scenario. You delegate a task to one of your employees. They come back to you an hour later and say, "I finished the task, boss." And you say, "Did you do it completely and properly?" What do you think the answer will be? Most likely, the answer will be yes. But what if the employee didn't fully understand your expectations? What if the employee was having a bad day and didn't put their full effort into the task? What if they did complete the task properly, but their completion of the task caused another problem that they didn't even notice? The point of following up personally isn't because you can't trust employees. It's that you and your employees are human, and whenever humans interact with each other, there is a chance of miscommunication and misunderstanding. So the answer to, "I finished the task, boss," should always be, "Great, please show me what you did." Tip number 2 is to follow up at the appropriate time. You've heard the saying about closing the barn door after the horse has already escaped. In many cases, follow-up is best done before a delegated task is entirely done. Wouldn't you rather know early that you're going in the wrong direction on a project instead of finding out after you've already completed it? Your employees feel the same way. Follow up in time to be able to redirect rather than waiting until the end when the project will have to be completely redone if it's wrong. Tip number 3 is to match your frequency of follow-up with the number of times the employee performs the task. This tip is most relevant for regularly recurring employee activities such as serving customers. Assume an employee serves 50 customers in a day. If you follow up on one of those interactions, the employee has performed the activity 49 times without any follow-up. Without follow-up, there can be no feedback, either praise or correction. what do you think will happen to the employee's engagement and performance? They may feel ignored. They may lose motivation to perform at their best going forward. If the service to customers is somehow different than your expectations, the employee will not receive that feedback and will therefore not have the opportunity to correct their behavior. Worse yet, their uncorrected performance 49 times in a row will reinforce bad habits. When you do finally follow up and try to correct the behavior, it will be harder for the employee to break the bad habits that have already become more deeply embedded. The chart on the screen is not meant to be literal. In other words, it doesn't mean that you should literally follow up 4 times for 10 occurrences of the employee activity. It is simply meant to show the reality that you can't personally inspect every single activity, but you should increase the frequency of your follow-up as the number of employee occurrences increases. Tip number 4 is to mix announced follow-up with unannounced follow-up. Many times it makes sense to set the expectation that you will follow up at a particular time. It might sound something like, go ahead and get started on that project. I will come by in about 20 minutes and check to see how it's going. In this situation, the employee knows they have 20 minutes to make some tangible progress on the task, and they also know that they will have a chance in 20 minutes to ask questions if anything about the project gets confusing. Let's be honest, we are all on our best behavior when we know authority figures are watching. When you as the boss announce that you will be back to check at a specific time, employees know their performance will be evaluated, so they will put their best effort into the task. But to be most effective as a manager, you want to know that your employees perform satisfactorily even when you aren't watching. That means that your follow-up must sometimes come as a surprise. Unannounced follow-up has 3 big benefits. First, you get to see real life rather than a show. Second, you establish an expectation in the employee that you can and will follow up at any time, even if you haven't announced it. That encourages the employee to put in their best effort more consistently, whether they expect you to follow up or not. And third, you get the chance to catch the employee doing it right on their own. Catching an employee performing at or above your expectations is obviously good, and it's even better when you know they did so because of their own good initiative rather than knowledge that you would be checking. The final tip for effective follow-up is to not feel bad about following up. I understand that follow-up might make it seem like you don't trust an employee. I understand that too much follow-up might feel like micromanagement. And I understand that employees may sometimes get frustrated with too much follow-up. All of that might make you hesitant to follow up too often. Well, don't feel bad about following up. It's your job to follow up. That's what you get paid to do. If you don't follow up, you can't provide feedback. That means you can't correct behavior when it's wrong, and you can't praise behavior when it's right. If you don't follow up, you can't actually know whether work is getting done. Remember, you are responsible for everything. So if you don't know whether work is getting done, you don't know whether you are doing your own job. Just like the tips for success with delegating, you should always be respectful when you follow up. Use common courtesy words and phrases such as, "May I please take a look at your progress on that task?" As long as you are respectful and polite, your follow-up is something that employees should expect and accept. If you are fair with your feedback, follow-up is something your employees should also come to appreciate. So there's absolutely no reason to feel bad about following up. In fact, you should feel bad whenever you don't follow up. Follow-up is the critical bridge you must cross over and over again throughout your time as a manager. My last image for you in this module, an image that will serve as the key message of the module, is this image of what you are like as a manager without regular follow-up. You are like a person with a blindfold on. You wander around bumping into things and having no clue what is going on around you. If you absorb this image and vow to avoid it as much as you possibly can, you will take away the most important message from this module. That brings us to the end of Module 4. Our next module is Module 5, where we'll discuss the twin management behaviors of praise and correct. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next time.